Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
You're about to listen to a historical episode of Dark Poutine. After episode 149, you will find Scott is no longer with the show. In an effort to maintain continuity and offer listeners as many episodes as possible, we are leaving the episodes in which he co-hosted intact. Thank you.
Welcome to Dark Poutine. I'm Mike Brown, creator and host. With me as usual is my good friend and co-host, Scott Hemingway. Say hello, Scott.
What's the haps, y'all?
What is the haps?
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of CuriousCast, its affiliate Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Listener discretion is strongly advised. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We're two ordinary Canadians chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, even though it's summertime. Grab yourself a double-double and a Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine. What about the chomp chomp?
Chomp, chomp. I totally forgot.
You forgot?
I done did.
This is episode 83.
Whoa! Woo! Woo!
Where were you in 1983, Scott?
I was living in East Vancouver. I was 9, enjoying my life in East Van. You know, doing what you do.
There you go.
Wandering.
Living with the pops?
Living with my mom primarily.
There you go.
Yep.
On with the show. This week's show contains graphic descriptions of the events and facts surrounding a brutal double murder.
Great.
This week we're off to New Brunswick in a typically quiet village of 2,300 people called Minto.
Oh.
50 kilometers east of Fredericton in Sunbury County. Early on, coal mining drove the Minto economy via the railroad since removed.
2,300, that's a teeny tiny little town.
Yeah, it's a village.
Yeah.
The village was rocked by the events occurring in April 2005 when a grisly murder scene was discovered at 358 Slope Road. Residents Fred Fulton, 74, known for his love of playing and listening to country music, and his kind wife, Veronica or Verna Decarie, lay dead, butchered in their small rural home.
Oh, it's always odd, elderly individuals murdered. It's an odd, like... How can you be angry at elderly?
Well, you're going to hear how.
Yeah.
The village got its second blow when it became clear that one of their own, a 22-year-old neighbour of Fred and Verna's, was sought as a person of interest in the murders. He was on the run.
So neighbour.
Yes. This is the story of the Minto murders, Verna Decarie and Fred Fulton. Much of the following comes directly from court documents. Debbie Mowat, Fred's daughter, wanted to invite he and Verna over to her place for a visit on Sunday, April 24th, 2005. She called them that afternoon but got no answer. The next day she tried to contact the older couple again and her calls went unanswered. When she tried calling on Tuesday, April 26th, and there was still no answer, Debbie was extremely concerned that something was wrong. It was time to go and knock on the door, if only to make herself feel better. At around 3 p.m., when Debbie Mowat arrived, she noticed that Fred's car was not in the driveway in its usual spot. It wasn't there at all. Debbie had been there playing cards with the couple on Friday only 4 days earlier. Fred and Verna had not mentioned that they'd been planning any kind of getaway that week. It was odd for them to have been out of contact for this long, or not to have let anybody know that they were leaving. Debbie walked around to the back door of the cozy 2-bedroom bungalow. She made her way up the back steps toward the screened porch and saw the door was slightly ajar. Entering the mudroom, Debbie noted bottles scattered about the typically well-ordered room, but also, and more ominously, were what appeared to be many bloodstains as well. As Debbie entered the kitchen, she was met with a horrible sight that no one, let alone a loving daughter, should ever have to witness. There, laying in front of the washer and dryer, was what Debbie assumed by its size and shape to be the decapitated body of her father, Fred Fulton. Debbie's concern turned to Verna. She was not in the kitchen nor in the living area. Debbie started down the hallway toward the bedroom but stopped, frightened of what she might find, or that whoever had done this was still in the house. Debbie was screaming for help as she came out of the house, which brought a neighbor, Paul LeBlanc, who lived right across the street, to investigate after calling 911. Debbie was frantic, but managed to tell LeBlanc that she'd seen her father's body lying in a pool of blood on the kitchen floor. She was also screaming that someone had, quote, stolen his head.
Holy crackers. Anytime decapitation is involved, there's some intense anger.
A single constable, Philip Brannan, from the Minto detachment of the RCMP, was first on the scene. Dispatch had prepped him for at least one homicide involving decapitation. Debbie Mowat yelled to Brannan and pointed at the house as he pulled up. "They took my father's head," she said.
I don't know how one could prepare themselves for that, but wow.
Yeah, like what went through this cop's mind at that point?
I guess it's just a continuous acknowledgement of, okay, be ready. Here's what you're going to see. Yep. Be ready. Yep. Here's what you're going to, like, just constantly reaffirming.
Also, as I mentioned earlier, is the guy still in the house?
Yeah. And is there anybody else, and what will I be seeing there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Constable Brannan went into the house the same way Debbie had, also noting what appeared to be bloodstains in the messy mudroom. Brannan saw a decapitated male body lying on his back, clad only in undershorts. There was blood all over the body and surrounding area. A blood-soaked blanket covered a bit of the man's legs. Unable to find the man's head after a cursory search, Constable Brannan decided that he should lock down the scene so as not to spoil evidence, and went back outside to a traumatized Debbie Mowat. The second RCMP officer on the scene was Constable Peter Campbell. He arrived as Brannan was learning that there was another resident of the home, as yet unaccounted for, Veronica or Verna Decarie. As Brannan gathered information outside, Constable Campbell entered the bungalow and made his way carefully down the hall to the bedroom of the home. Sure enough, there in the master bedroom was the body of an older female, later identified as Verna Decarie. She was lying on her right side in a pool of blood. She was wearing a blood-soaked nightgown. The scene was a gory one, even for the most seasoned officers. As Campbell was leaving the residence to await the arrival of the IDEN team, he noticed a military-style dagger laying on the floor of the living room.
Oh, man. This is an intense start.
Yeah.
This is some brutal slaying.
Like I mentioned off the top, a lot of this comes from court documents, so these are facts that have been entered into evidence.
Yeah, that's, I'm just trying to put myself in the officer's shoes and walking into this scene and trying to remain calm, trying to remain focused, and
especially in such a small place, you don't expect to see such a brutal crime. I'm sure they've seen suicides.
Yep.
I'm sure they've seen, a murder.
Yep, or
something like this.
Some violent assaults and whatnot, but like a decapitation.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like there's just so much anger involved to do that, and so to see it, to walk in and to see a body with no head is like I can't imagine ever being able to fully process that.
Yeah, well, and especially Fred's daughter.
Oh my
Debbie
God!
Had to see that as well.
Yeah, at least as an officer, you are trained in how to remain calm in these situations. As a family member, oh my God, I would just be
I'm hoping she got some treatment for PTSD at some point, or some victim services.
Yeah, absolutely.
Campbell informed Debbie, Paul LeBlanc, Constable Brennan, and the small crowd of neighbors that had gathered there that there was indeed another body in the house that matched a description given of Verna. Debbie also mentioned that Fred's red Ford Taurus was missing. Perhaps if cops could find that, they'd find the killer of this well-respected and much-loved couple. A be on the lookout was put out for the car.
Yeah, so again, small town and very noticeable car, red. So hopefully, I mean, depending on how long there was between the crime and when they were found, hopefully he's not too far. And that car gets noticed.
RCMP asked who might do such a thing. Right away, the name of Gregory Allen Despres was on most people's lips.
Oh.
Gregory Despres spent many weekends in the travel trailer right next door to the Fulton home on his grandparents' property. There had been an ongoing property dispute between Fred Fulton and Gregory Despres' grandfather, Adolphe Despres. In August of 2004, Gregory Despres had become involved and threatened Fred Fulton with a knife. After that, Fulton had become fearful of the younger man and had to take sleeping pills just to get some rest at night.
Oh, geez, must have been quite scared then.
Gregory Allen Despres was charged and convicted of threatening with a weapon and uttering threats. He was due to be sentenced for those crimes the day before the bodies of Fred and Verna were found.
Oh, there we go.
Gregory Despres was missing too. No one had seen him for a couple of days either. The bolo was updated to include a description of Despres, and the manhunt was on.
Yeah, I mean, that all just makes sense.
In the meantime, the RCMP forensics team began the meticulous task of gathering evidence from the crime scene. Quickly, Fred Fulton's head was discovered. It was still in the kitchen, only feet from his body, but inside a pillowcase under the kitchen table. Neighbors and relatives were canvassed. The last time anyone had seen either of the couple was when a neighbor spoke to Fred on the evening of April 23, 2005. Fred was practicing at playing horseshoes when the neighbor spoke with him. The neighbor noticed Fred's car was missing the next morning around 8 a.m. and had not returned since.
Okay.
Fred Fulton's grandson, Fred Mowat, backed up this timeline, saying he'd spent time with his grandfather playing music and having a few drinks until 6:45 on the evening of 23rd of April. Mowat had tried to call his granddad on the 24th, but had received no answer.
So lots of information quickly to help narrow down some timelines here.
Yes. The grandson did notice Gregory Allen Despres at some point in the yard near his grandfather Adolphe's trailer and watched him go into Adolphe's house. Everyone was well aware about what had gone on between Gregory and Fred. Obviously, Despres was not well liked by his neighbors or the rest of their family.
Yeah.
Fred Fulton's car was found near a gravel pit on April 27, 2005, almost 125 kilometers southwest of Minto, and near the road leading towards St. Stephen, New Brunswick, a town that sits on the border with the state of Maine.
Okay.
On hearing of the discovery of the vehicle and its location, a woman came forward claiming she and her husband had noticed the Taurus parked at an odd angle with its lights off when they were returning to St. Stephen from Fredericton on the night of April 24th. As the pair drove by, they noticed a small, slight person, quote, wrapping something. They were unable to verify whether or not this was Gregory Despres, as they didn't get a good look at the person. But Despres was thin and only 5 feet tall.
Oh.
A fish plant worker, on his way home from a late-night shift, picked up a hitchhiker at 2:30 a.m. on April 25, 2005. This was along Route 3, about 5 kilometers closer to St. Stephen. The hitchhiker had been carrying a motorcycle helmet and had a hatchet and a chainsaw attached to his backpack.
There are some cojones on that driver for picking up a 2:30 a.m. hitchhiker with a hatchet and chainsaw.
Yes. But, I don't know. There's lots of woodsy people around New Brunswick. But
for sure, there's there's a different feel in small towns, in small communities and stuff. But still, hatchet, chainsaw.
The driver remembered the man was small, about 5 feet tall, but other than that, he didn't recall much else. The driver dropped off the man after 4 to 5 miles as he was turning north, and the hitchhiker was going to St. Stephen. The man said, quote, "They had a short conversation, but then the hitchhiker became difficult to understand."
Oh, interesting.
On his way toward the border crossing in St. Stephen, a trucker hauling a load of lumber toward Maine spotted a man walking along the highway. This is number 3, between 5:30 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. He noted the man had a strange haircut, a strip of long dark hair in the middle, and bald on the sides. The trucker later positively ID'd Gregory Allen Despres as the person he'd seen.
Yeah, so that's the hair, pretty much the hairstyle of a young Glenn Danzig.
Yeah.
So it's something that is absolutely stands out, not common, and easy to recognize.
Another man on his way to St. Stephen after delivering papers picked up a hitchhiker at 6:30 a.m. So we're seeing the entire timeline.
Yeah.
The hitchhiker was, quote, wearing a dark brown jacket and a full-face motorcycle helmet.
He was wearing the helmet?
Apparently. He must have taken it off because the man said he had a mohawk haircut and sat in the backseat of the car. The driver also remarked that the short young man, quote, had a green chainsaw and a backpack with a long sword and a tomahawk. So he had a sword as well. The hitchhiker had told the driver he was meeting a man who was giving him a job in the lumber industry. So, again, here's this guy picked up. And now we know he has a sword. If I see somebody with a sword and a chainsaw and a hatchet wearing a full-faced motorcycle helmet, and he was also wearing, like, combat pants and stuff like that.
I'd definitely ask him if he needs a ride.
No, I'm not picking that guy up.
Well, I mean, swords are very common in the lumber industry.
And they're also very common in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
And
but
this is not that.
That's how, sometimes that's the fun way to chop down a tree. Use a sword.
Feudal Japan.
Wow. Yeah, I'm amazed at how, 2 people have picked up this fella.
2 have picked him up, yeah.
Yeah. Sword, hatchet, chainsaw.
Upon arriving in St. Stephen 30 minutes later, the young man, later ID'd as Despres, asked about a payphone to use that was away from people. The driver dropped Despres off at a nearby restaurant with a payphone and drove off. Despres was then seen again by the owner of a furniture store in downtown St. Stephen between 8:15 and 8:45. The man was prepping to open his shop. The strange-looking little man with the odd haircut was wearing a poncho, carrying a chainsaw, and walking down the street toward the U.S. border. Despres ducked into an alley beside the furniture store. The store owner opened the door leading to the alley behind his shop moments later. He was taking out the trash. Despres was still in the alley, and the store owner saw him put a pair of pants into his shopping cart in the alley.
I don't this is bizarre.
Days later, when he saw Despres on the news, he called RCMP to report seeing the fugitive to the cops, and they took the pants from the cart into evidence. Gregory Allen Despres arrived at the U.S.-Canadian border crossing at Calais, Maine, soon after the last time he was spotted in St. Stephen. Despres was detained for a time by U.S. Customs officials due to the weapons he was carrying.
Oh my God, he tried to get those across the border?
Yeah. He had brass knuckles, a homemade sword, a hatchet, pepper spray, a knife, and a chainsaw that appeared to be bloodstained.
This is all so bloody fascinating and bizarre. I don't know where it's going. You can't, if you're trying to flee a violent murder that you have committed, you have to know, trying to cross the border with a bloody chainsaw, brass knuckles, a knife, a homemade sword, you're going to be stopped.
Well, he was stopped.
Yeah.
From a Globe and Mail article, quote, U.S. border authorities took the weapons and fingerprinted Mr. Despres, a naturalized U.S. citizen.
Oh.
They let him into the country even though he told them he was a Marine sniper and an assassin with 700 kills to his credit, end quote.
Now, did you say they let him in?
Yeah.
Well, I've watched like Border Patrol on TV. They seem to do a much better job at vetting than what we're seeing here.
Customs officials had even contacted the RCMP about the strange little man making all the wacky claims. The RCMP had no reasons for U.S. Customs to hold him, not yet. After only a 10-minute delay, Gregory Allen Despres freely walked into the USA a full day prior to the discovery of the bodies of Fred Fulton and Verna Decarie back in Minto, New Brunswick.
Dear shit, I'm just so perplexed.
When called to task, U.S. Customs officials said they couldn't hold somebody, quote, just because they were weird. Despres was a U.S. citizen, after all.
Okay, well, I don't think it wasn't just that he's weird.
He was lying to them.
Sure, but...
Like saying you're a Marine sniper and an assassin with 700 kills to your credit?
Yep.
They can hold you based on, I think this guy's lying.
Yeah, and again...
To get across the border.
And again, bloody chainsaw. Chainsaw with blood on it, sword, knife, brass, and all of these things can make you stop and say, so I'm a bit concerned that you're coming into this country for reasons other than what you're stating. We're gonna...
But he was a U.S. citizen, so they let him in.
I get that.
After the discovery of Fred and Verna, on a hunch, RCMP contacted authorities at the border and in Despres' home state of Massachusetts. A dispatcher in Massachusetts who noticed the state driver's license the RCMP had on file for Despres didn't match any in the system. It was missing a number or letter, so the dispatcher tried a few and got a hit. There was Despres' Massachusetts address. He was picked up late, on the same day as the bodies had been discovered. The address really didn't make a difference, though, and here's why. From a CBC article on June 8, 2005, after clearing the border, Despres hitchhiked to southern Massachusetts, where a state trooper saw him wandering along the side of the highway. He was arrested after a routine check for outstanding warrants revealed that he hadn't shown up for the sentencing hearing.
Okay.
So there you go.
Can they not check for warrants and stuff at the border, just out of curiosity?
They can. But he was crossing on the morning of, so he hadn't missed his court date yet.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was just hours.
Oh, that same day. Okay, yeah.
It was the same day that he was supposed to be sentenced.
Yeah, okay.
He had crossed the border, but he had no warrant out because
at that moment,
he hadn't missed his court yet.
Yeah, makes sense.
Despres, being in the U.S., complicated things, obviously. Yep. Now the legal wrangling had to extradite a U.S. citizen for 2 homicides in Canada. A mugshot of wide-eyed Gregory Allen Despres and his weird hairdo was taken by Massachusetts authorities, and it's chilling.
Mm-hmm.
It's even showed up as a strange graffiti stencil in Montreal, according to a photo on Wikipedia.
Oh.
And we'll post the photos on darkpoutine.com.
It's worth checking out. It'll give you chills.
On September 15, 2005, nearly 5 months after Fred and Verna were murdered, their alleged killer was extradited back to Canada on the charges of first-degree murder ×2. The hearings went smoothly. Part of the evidence given was that blood found on Gregory Despres' clothes matched that of Fred Fulton. Canadian prosecutors were now ready to go, but as we know, the wheels of justice turn frustratingly slow.
Yep.
Not to mention this case would need to be tried twice before it's resolved. We'll get into more evidence and the 2 trials after a break.
Woo.
Despres' trial was scheduled to begin on September 5, 2006, but it was delayed when Despres fired his lawyer. To get another attorney up to speed would take some time, so the trial date was pushed to January 8, 2007. Despres was pleading not guilty. Justice Judy Clendenning was presiding over the bench trial. That means no jury, only the judge decides the case based on the evidence.
Yep.
The prosecution began presenting its case. On April 29, 2005, Dr. Ken Obenson, a pathologist, had conducted the autopsies of Fred and Verna. Here's some of his testimony about the state of Verna Decarie's body taken directly from court documents. Quote, He testified there were 30 injuries on the body of Verna Decarie, 4 of which were particularly significant. These included deep stab wounds to her left face and upper neck, 1.5 to 3.5 centimeters in length, and deep stab wounds to her lower anterior neck, 1 to 3 centimeters in length, and 0.5 to 1.8 centimeters wide. So these are big gashes.
Mm-hmm.
The other 2 significant injuries were in the chest area and caused punctures to her lungs.
Ugh.
Dr. Obenson testified that 27 of the injuries were sharp force injuries inflicted by a sharp metal instrument. In his opinion, the cause of Ms. Decarie's death was multiple sharp force injuries causing massive blood loss, resulting in the heart ceasing to function. End quote.
That sounds painful and not immediate. Like, oh, God.
30 wounds.
Wow.
And 27 are sharp force, so you think the others are him fighting with her.
Yeah. And it can take a while, I think, for one to bleed out to a point where the heart stops working.
Well, if the lungs are punctured, you immediately get what's called a sucking chest wound. I can't remember the exact name for it, but it's not going to take a long time, but it's very violent.
Yeah. Oh, poor lady.
Obenson shared his findings in Fred Fulton's death, also from court documents. Quote, in addition to being decapitated, Mr. Fulton had 31 injuries, most of which were sharp force injuries, inflicted by a sharp metal instrument. 2 of the more significant ones were in the chest area and had punctured his lungs, while a third perforated his diaphragm and pericardium. He also found a number of defensive injuries on Mr. Fulton's thighs, toes, and fingers. In his opinion, Mr. Fulton's death was caused by multiple sharp force injuries and, of course, the decapitation. End quote.
Yeah, again, decapitation. There's just immense anger involved in doing something. That's unless there's just I'm trying to remove some evidence. It's typically an act of absolute hatred and anger.
Yeah. RCMP Staff Sergeant Alan Richard, supervisor of the forensic ident team and a 29-year veteran of the force, testified about the blood evidence found at 358 Slope Road. It paints a chilling picture of a brutal attack. From court documents, 1. A person with wet blood on the bottom of their shoes walked through the residence and back porch. 2. A person whose bare feet were stained wet with blood, presumably Mr. Fulton, moved about the living room, kitchen, and bathroom. 3. Mr. Fulton passively bled on the porch while moving about between the screen door and the pool of blood by the displaced chair. Mr. Fulton was then dragged across the floor of the porch into the residence. 4. The partial footwear impression in the blood located beside the left foot of Mr. Fulton was deposited on the floor prior to the comforter being placed as found, so the thing over his legs. 5. The partially concealed wipe and footwear impression was located on the kitchen floor between Mr. Fulton and the dryer, is consistent with a shoe sliding on the floor laterally toward Mr. Fulton, while a pre-existing swipe transfer of blood was still wet, and before the projected blood on the floor had completely dried. And chilling to me is the next one. Mr. Fulton, this is number 6, Mr. Fulton, while actively bleeding, was at one time sitting on the bathroom floor with his blood-soaked back area in contact with the door, which would have been partially open. While seated, Mr. Fulton was moving about through the bloodstains located on the floor. So he essentially tried to hold the bathroom door closed, unsuccessfully attempting to save his own life.
Oh, God.
And finally, number 7, the bloodstain patterns at the crime scene are consistent that Miss Decarie did not leave the master bedroom after she received the bloodletting injuries. So, like I said, I think it was over for her after the attack was over.
This is horrific.
So, what we see here is this guy and Mr. Fulton are running about the house.
Yeah, I mean...
he's trying to get away from him, perhaps.
And I believe there was a point when he was on the patio. Bled on the patio, I believe.
The porch.
Yeah, patio, porch. There's a pee involved. It's fairly simple, but so...
Yeah, they were in and out of the house and all kinds of stuff going on.
Oh,
wow. And the knife was found in the living room, but it just, all this, the guy's slipping around in the blood that he's... the bloody mess that he's created. It's awful.
Oh, my God. Yeah, this is terrible.
The evidence placing Gregory Allen Despres at the scene was damning. The boots Despres was wearing matched bloody footprints left at the crime scene. The cuts and wear to the bottom of Despres' footwear were distinctive. In fact, regarding one in particular, quote, the probability that a different boot made the unknown impression was 1 in 638 trillion.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There was DNA evidence, too. Gregory Despres' clothes gave him away. Staff Sergeant Richard presented into evidence, quote, the green flak jacket, the pair of work leather gloves, the pair of black leather boots, the blue hooded sweatshirt, and the pair of blue pants which were seized from Mr. Despres.
Oh, a lot of damning evidence.
From court documents, quote, an object or a person bearing the wet blood of Mr. Fulton made contact with the left front bottom area of the flak jacket. The front area of the flak jacket was facing the blood source of Mr. Fulton when it was affected by a measure of force. So, splatter evidence on, it was splashback onto him.
Yeah.
The dorsal aspect of the left glove was in contact with an object or person bearing the wet blood of Mr. Fulton. And the blue hooded sweatshirt was in contact with an object or person bearing the blood of Mr. Fulton. End quote.
Yeah. Lots of blood evidence.
Lots and lots of evidence against this guy.
Yeah.
The Crown brought others in to testify, establishing the conflict between Gregory Allen Despres and Fred Fulton, as well as those who'd last seen Fred and Verna alive, and the people who'd seen Despres as he made his way to the U.S. after the crime. Something was up at the defense table, though. There were problems as the defense began their efforts to present their side.
Oh, interesting.
Despres had become increasingly difficult for his new attorney to deal with, arguing often. On February 1st, 2007, Despres' condition degenerated to the point of his screaming at his lawyer.
Oh.
Despres wanted him fired as he was, quote, accusing him of working for Al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein.
What the shit?
A request was made for Despres to be sent for psychological evaluation. The judge agreed to the request and the trial ended pending the findings. Forensic psychiatrist Dr. Scott Terrio's diagnosis was schizophrenia, paranoid subtype with antisocial personality traits. Terrio's report was interesting.
I bet. Let's hear this.
Quote, in interview, Mr. Despres expresses a wide range of delusional beliefs touching on most aspects of his life history and experiences. In the interview, he quickly launched into a discussion of the Super Space Patrol, indicating that he has a Class 4 pilot's license with the Super Space Patrol, and going on at some length about his rank. Mr. Despres went on to express his belief that everybody has a rank, and this is a central organizing principle around the world. End quote.
Yeah, so a lot of everything said there is not real.
Right.
Wow. I love that it's called the Super Space Patrol, not just Space Patrol.
We're not making fun of this guy's mental illness, just what he's saying is very bizarre.
It's so bizarre.
There were other delusions as well, many including terrorism and secret government organizations, and the denial his parents were his actual parents. He also believed his actions were being recorded by satellites.
Yeah, this is not a well individual.
Gregory Despres' mother reported that, quote, from 2004 onward, shut us all out, and that he became increasingly uncommunicative to both herself and her parents. She notes that he became increasingly irritable with others, especially his grandparents, with whom he had the most contact, and indicates that once he reported to her that when he smoked dope, he, quote, heard voices in his head.
This is getting really fascinating.
She went on to say that he'd become obsessed with anything military and began to dress in military-style clothing. Lots of camo. After 3 more days of hearings on April 26, 2007, Gregory Allen Despres was determined unfit to stand trial, but seemed to be responding to the medication he was on now. His status would be reviewed regularly to determine whether he was ready to face another trial.
Wow. Okay. But hearing these things makes things make a bit more sense in regards to his actions and whatnot. If you're not aware of reality.
Yeah. On July 11, 2007, provincial mental health determined that thanks to the medication, Despres was ready to go to trial. A new trial date was set for November 5, 2007. This time, Mr. Justice William T. Grant was overseeing the bench trial. The first day of the trial was spent mostly admitting the evidence from the first trial as presented by the prosecution, so they didn't have to go through all that evidence again. And a lot of it was very valuable. And like we mentioned, damning to Mr. Despres. On day 2, a gruesome video of the crime scene was shown, highlighting the violent activity that was evident in the home. Observers in the court saw the bodies of Verna and Fred where they last lay, covered in blood and brutalized.
Oh, that would be difficult to see.
Yeah, especially there's your family.
Yeah. Oh.
Also on day 2, Adolphe Despres, Gregory's grandfather, testified at the trial about what he'd seen happening to his grandson over the past few years. From court documents, here are some of the highlights of Adolphe Despres' responses when he was asked about Gregory talking to himself in the mirror on cross-examination. The grammar has been kept as Mr. Despres shared it, so bear with us. Quote, "Oh yes, he done that a lot. He done it upstairs in his room, like he would talk to himself. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd see me get up, and I'd go up in the stairway and holler to him. But I never mentioned his name, see. He didn't want me to call him by his name. So at the end of it, I give him a name, Junior. And he talked to himself, like I'd say it's 2:30 in the morning, why not send your little buddy home? He was talking to somebody. I swear to God there was another person up there, and sometimes it was a woman that was talking upstairs. And that went on for a long time. He'd go in the bathroom and he'd talk to himself, but he stayed up there. He'd go at 8 in the morning, and he wouldn't come up until about 5 that night. We'd try hard to get him out of the bathroom, but he was talking to himself there in the mirror."
So there's been a lot of bizarre behavior leading up to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Despres said it sounded like different voices, but when asked directly if Gregory Despres had been there alone the whole time, Adolphe said, yep, there was nobody there.
Wow.
His grandparents would hear the voice of a woman for extended periods of time talking to Gregory. It kind of reminds me of Norman Bates in Psycho a little bit.
Yeah.
That character.
Yeah.
Or who's modeled after Ed Gein.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he must have, been playing many roles in his head.
The defense went to work trying to prove that, in fact, Gregory Allen Despres was mentally ill to the point where he was not criminally responsible for the murders of Fred Fulton and Verna Decarie. Gregory's bizarre behavior before the crime was brought up and talked about extensively. His behavior post-offense was interesting, too.
I bet.
Gregory Despres said he was, quote, a member of the NSA, an assassin, that his wife had been killed in California by the Ku Klux Klan, that he either didn't know her name or that her name was no name, and that he was, quote, active, meaning he was an active member of the military. He was not subject to civilian courts.
Okay.
He named a mysterious Captain Beck was going to arrive and take him to Kansas in a helicopter.
Oh.
Despres himself was not talking to anyone, though, about the murders of Fred and Verna. He was maintaining he'd been returning to the U.S. after completing a, quote, assassination mission.
Okay, there's some insight.
From court documents speaking to Gregory Despres' capacity to willfully commit the murder, Dr. Scott Theriault said, quote, if Mr. Despres, as the result of believing that he was in the military, believed that he was on a mission, and that mission involved the assassination of victims in this matter, then Mr. Despres could not be said to be able to appreciate the moral wrongfulness of his actions, in that he would have felt that his actions were sanctioned. It is my opinion that at the time of the killing of Fred Fulton and Verna Decarie, Mr. Despres was acting under such a belief, end quote.
That does make sense to me.
Further on in the same document, another psychiatrist, Dr. Woodside, said, quote, in this case, I believe there is substantial evidence that this individual is suffering from a mental disorder, namely paranoid schizophrenia, which could have conceivably robbed him of the capacity to appreciate the nature and quality of his acts or omissions, or to know their wrongfulness. I believe that it is highly likely Mr. Despres was continuing to experience psychotic symptomology at the material time given observations of his behavior prior to the offenses and after. It would be extremely unlikely for his symptoms to have remitted at the time of the alleged offenses in the absence of his having received any treatment for them. And finally, overall, I do not believe that Mr. Despres would have known the wrongfulness of his actions at the material time due to his experiencing active symptoms of psychosis as already noted above." End quote.
So, I mean, typically for to be deemed criminally not responsible, you have to not know what you're doing is wrong. He clearly did, but yet it does make sense, though, that if in his mind the belief is he's on a mission, like this is a job and I can't, like I have them doing it for the government, I can't be caught, so that does kind of fit the narrative that's going on in his head.
It makes it not wrong to him to do those things.
It's hired by the NSA has him doing this, or the whomever, the military. It's such an interesting topic and conversation, though, too, because it's the emotional side for most people want to not believe and just think that he's just lying.
Yeah.
But to get the court system to believe that you're mentally...
It's not easy.
It's not easy at all.
Yeah. So, but I can't imagine how the families are feeling at this point.
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
They're thinking, wait a minute, this guy might get away with murdering our parents.
Yeah, and I couldn't help but feel that way if I were in their shoes.
Yeah.
Again, it's that emotional side of victimology that it's very difficult to separate emotion, and I couldn't. I don't think I'd be able to. I would be wanting this person to pay.
Mm-hmm. And okay, so he had also been charged for that other crime, but he was about to be sentenced for that. And was he insane at that point too?
Good question.
Was this a revenge thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the timeline adds up to, hey, he's about to be sentenced on the day before the bodies are found.
Yeah.
The day before the actual sentencing is to take place, he kills these people and then takes off to the U.S.
Which is way too coincidental that it can't be coincidental.
Right.
But, yeah.
So was it the stress of that coupled with his disorder?
I'm going to say in my limited knowledge that most likely the stress has him panicking and freaking out, and they're like, oh, what? You know what, though? Like, I actually think this is why all that happened is because they're working with the Russians or who, right.
In the end, Justice Grant said that Gregory Allen Despres was in fact guilty of the murders of Fred and Verna Decarie, but the family and friends of the victims were disappointed by what followed. From Justice Grant's decision, quote, "When I consider the totality of the evidence relating to the extent of Mr. Despres' incapacity, I am satisfied on a balance of probabilities that he, quote, lacked the capacity to decide whether his actions were, quote, right or wrong, and hence to make a rational choice about whether to do them or not.
Yep.
I therefore find that the defense has proven on a balance of probabilities that when he committed the murders of Fred Fulton and Verna Decarie, Gregory Allen Despres was suffering from a disease of the mind that prevented him from knowing his actions were wrong. Pursuant to Section 672.34 of the Criminal Code, I therefore find Gregory Allen Despres committed the murders of Fred Fulton and Verna Decarie as alleged in the indictment, but that he is not criminally responsible on the account of mental disorder. Signed, William Grant, Justice of the Court of Queen's Bench." End quote.
Yeah, I completely get that. I get his ruling.
Because, yeah, I have this weird feeling about the timing.
No, without a doubt, that casts a huge question mark.
Mm-hmm.
But again, to have multiple psychiatrists, doctors, to assess and then determine that he wasn't that he was suffering, that he's mentally ill, and couldn't distinguish that what he was doing was wrong.
Yeah.
That it's not an easy thing to do. It really isn't. And so I have to put weight there. But
you have to put weight there. But here's the thing: he has not, even to this day, spoken about what happened. You can't say, in my mind. I kind of agree with the families. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like, he's never talked about this.
Yeah.
How can you say he knew whether or not what he was doing was wrong when he's never even discussed it?
Yeah.
It's not come up. So here we go. Gregory Allen Despres was sent to Shepherdie Healing Center, a facility for forensic psychiatry attached to Dorchester Penitentiary in New Brunswick.
Yeah.
There are hearings at either 12 or 24-month intervals that the Fulton and Decarie families attend regularly, obviously feeling re-victimized over and over and having to give victim impact statements and stress over the possible release of this man who they continue to fear. Even though staff feels that Gregory Allen Despres is easy to care for, he still refuses to talk about what happened at 358 Slope Road. From a CBC article, Theriot said, this is the psychiatrist, said even after 10 years, quote, he's the only patient who refused systematically to discuss these issues.
Wow.
So this guy has seen a lot of people over the years, and Despres is the only one who's refused to talk about this stuff.
Oh, wow.
There's more. Also from the CBC article, Despres himself spoke, quote, as far as being guilty of murder, I'm still not guilty, Despres said. And so he was asked, you're saying, if I understand you, you say you didn't commit these offenses, one of the board members asked. Yes, sir, he replied. End quote. So he's denying still that he did it.
Yeah.
Was he that psychotic that he doesn't remember the event? Or was he hallucinating at the time that he was doing something different? I don't know, but if he's not, something stinks in the state of Denmark.
Yeah, you could say that if in his head, in the mentally ill, schizophrenic head, that he disassociated himself from it, or he completely still subscribes to the theory that I did this for the government and I can't speak about it, so I have to say I didn't do it. But if that's what he's saying, then there's no way he will get out, because that means he's still suffering. He is still mentally ill, because he would have to be at a point where he is saying, I now see what I did was wrong. We've seen other cases like this where the person, once treatment has set in and they're taking the proper medications and they're doing the things they're supposed to do, they end up extremely remorseful and apologetic and recognizing what they've done. But you're not seeing that with this guy.
No.
Not in the least.
No. This is where it kind of stinks for me. It's like, something's up. Like, if he's not willing to participate, why is he the only one who's never really wanted to participate? What does he have to gain by not participating?
Well, again, the plus side of that is if he's not willing to do these things and he's not willing to accept what he's done, he won't get out.
Yeah.
He will be, that's the thing. People think that you go to the mental health facility, whatever you want to call it, instead of jail, that you go there and a year later you're out. There is no end to when you're there. There's no set date of, like, you're sentenced to 10 years. Like, you're there until you can prove that you are
well enough to be in the community again.
Yeah. So if you're not willing to accept and acknowledge what's happened and talk about it, you're not well enough. And so that the plus side is he'll never get out if he continues this path.
Yeah. Despres said he knows he's sick and he needs medication, but he doesn't quite understand his disease. And Mary Kennedy Fulton, Fred's daughter-in-law, told CBC the reasons behind the family showing up at every hearing. Quote, we're trying to honor Papa and Verna's memory and to let people continue to be safe and for the issues that are there to be presented every time, that people never forget how wonderful they were as people, that they were taken from us and our family will never be the same, end quote.
Yeah, yes, Mary. And, and thank God that they're doing that. Thank God that they are showing up every time and speaking on behalf of the family and what damage was done.
It's the way the family has to be involved.
Oh,
what's
fuck.
Terrible.
Yes,
That's not. I'm not concerned about the hearings, and absolutely they have to happen, but it's the way they happen that sucks for these poor people who have been through these brutal crimes.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's another way, but I agree with you. I couldn't imagine. You've lost your loved ones. You've lost your loved ones. You want to try to heal and move forward, and to have to continually, yearly or bi-yearly, go and...
Even if the family does heal.
Yep.
Even if they are healing or doing whatever they need to do to get by this, it doesn't change the fact that two people are gone.
Yeah, and you're continually having to re-experience it by going to these hearings and re-dredge it up and, take the time. Like, for sure, it's a really shitty experience to have to be continually re-victimized.
Yeah.
It's certainly not a victim-friendly process.
No.
I can't think. I'm not aware, and I can't think of any other alternatives.
No.
But
we're not the people to answer that question.
No. But it's still like it is not a fair experience for the victims, for sure.
No,
for sure.
And this is what we've seen over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And we hear the victims saying this over and over and over again. Why doesn't the Canadian government have a look at this?
Yeah.
Maybe there's time for a review of these processes, and let's change them. Like, put your money where your mouth is. Hey, you know what? There's an election coming up. One of these parties could hop on that and make a big difference. Hey, NDP, you're running way behind, folks. You guys are lagging way behind. How about you fix that shit, and then people will vote for you?
Sadly,
how about that?
Sadly, I just don't think there would be enough traction behind it for them to get enough people. There wouldn't be enough people well, that's right, I want to vote. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. But I don't see any party giving a shit about it, sadly. But there has to be...
If enough people yell about it, then
For sure. There has to be a better way. There has to be. Do I know it? No. But there has to be.
Yes, but there are minds greater than ours that could get together and be paid to think about it and come up with a situation that would... These people already have PTSD.
Yep.
The one daughter has to walk in and see her dad has been decapitated.
Oh, fuck, yeah.
So,
Yep.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's such a difficult scenario in every capacity, but my heart is always with the victims. That's where my priorities typically lie, is with the victims. I can empathize in some cases with the criminal, the killer. I can empathize in understanding why things happened, but my heart and care is always prioritized towards the victims.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He's frustrating.
It really is. And we're just podcast hosts. Imagine being the victims.
Yeah.
Imagine being the we're this worked up, and we're just like two dudes with microphones.
We can be a voice. We can.
Oh, absolutely. It's good that we are here and speaking our thoughts. But I just mean emotion wise, we're this worked up, and we're just dudes with mics.
Well,
imagine the family.
Yep. Enough of this blather. We're not going to help anybody with this. Let's get on with the Patreon shoutouts. So Kyle Andrew Mooney is a new PM.
What?
Yeah, and he didn't. So what? He's been a supporter for a while. So he was a $1 patron before, and now he's upped his pledge to $25.
Oh,
Kyle, you're awesome.
Whoa.
But now your address and stuff isn't there. So please send it to us so I can put it into our database. So we know where to send you stickers and stuff.
Yeah, Kyle, that is so dope of you.
Yeah.
Hugs, buddy.
Thank you, sir. Brandon French from Norwich, New York. thank you for your pledge.
Oh, thank you, Brandon.
Sophie Benoit Vibert from St. Thomas, Ontario.
Oh, Sophie, thank you.
Thank you so
much.
much.
Thank you very much.
Marianne Murphy from Providence, Rhode Island. I got really drunk there with the with my martial arts grandmaster, Daniel K. Pye, and we ate at an Italian restaurant, and I met a mobster.
Wow, what?
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack in that
I know.
story.
That was an interesting weekend.
Yeah.
Kate Foss from Quincy, Massachusetts.
Great show, by the way.
Quincy, yes. Amy Lomelli from Beaverton, Oregon.
Thank you, Amy.
Melanie Gessie from Leduc, Alberta.
Thank you, Melanie.
And we have another PM.
Oh, what? 2 in 1 week?
Isn't this bonkers?
Bonkers.
Victor Ashton from High Level, Alberta.
Victor.
I'm wondering if he is related to my mother's ex.
I don't know.
Sure. Well, her last name is Ashton, so that's interesting.
Victor.
So Victor may be a relative in some way.
Is there a lower level Alberta?
Always with this.
Well, I mean, you have to wonder.
Well, yeah, you do.
You do.
Scott does anyway.
Constantly.
Mathieu Rodrigue from Rouen, Noranda, Quebec.
Wow.
Look at me trying on my Quebecois accent to pronounce the things correctly, and I will even say it for you this once. Poutine.
Whoa, Mike.
I know
feel
how
like
to pronounce
you just...
the word, but I'm an Englishman, and I pronounce it poutine.
Yeah. I'm just like, it must have taken a lot for you to just
Poutine.
pronounce it. You did it twice.
Look at that.
Oh my God.
Christine Maudsley from Edmonton, Alberta.
Oh, Christine, thank you.
Lots of supporters in Alberta,
Yeah.
especially in Edmonton. We love you guys. Thank you so much. Marissa Sapizinski.
I think you did well there.
I think I did well.
I think you did well.
And she's from Cookstown.
Thank you,
New Jersey.
Marissa.
Yeah. Sarah Miller, thank you for having an easy name to pronounce. And she's from Bend, Oregon. I've been through there, and actually that's very close to that Patterson Gimlin film, the famous Bigfoot sightings.
Oh, okay.
Bend, Oregon.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
Trish Covett. I don't know where Trish is from, but she covets things, apparently.
She does. She does.
Or it could be Covey.
No, it's Covet.
Is it Covet?
Yeah, it's Covet, yep.
Like one of the 7 deadlies or whatever? I know that's not Covet.
I don't think that's a covet.
This is not a 7 deadly.
No.
I just watched that movie the other day.
Yeah, it's not.
So what does she covet, Scott?
What doesn't she covet? It runs the gamut. But typically, what she covets most are duvet covers.
Oh.
Yeah. Which is, hey, go for it. I enjoy a good duvet cover.
Duvet covers are nice.
They're.
I want one with skulls on it.
Do you?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard to find.
There is one that I was looking at on Amazon. That's why it was on my mind.
Trish, with your expertise, help Mike find a skull duvet cover.
So where is she from?
Oh, she is not from a high-level Alberta.
Okay.
She's not. She is from, it's one of those hard to pronounce.
Quackenberg?
Wow, no, but there's a Quackenberg?
Yeah.
Damn, as there should be. It is
Chattanooga?
No, it's not on. It's in Africa. I'm trying to remember. Zimbabwe.
Carol has been to Zimbabwe
Has
numerous
she?
times. Yeah.
Has she? That is fantastic.
What does Trish, besides coveting things, what does Trish do in Zimbabwe?
Oh, she is a road paver. She paves roads.
I don't think there are many paved roads in Zimbabwe.
Well, now thus you see the employment opportunities.
That
That means there's a lot of opportunity to pave.
Roads.
And so that she's just capitalizing on that.
Wow, good for her.
She really is. And she's doing, it's good work. The Zimbabwe needs these roads.
Well, I guess they do.
Yeah, who doesn't need a well-paved road?
Well,
get Trish on
people
it.
who don't have a car, like, if you don't have a car, you kind of don't need a paved road.
You still want to walk on something nicely paved, don't you?
Not necessarily. Carol said that she would see the young Zimbabwean men, especially men, running everywhere. They would run, and that's why they become. There are so many long distance
triathletes and stuff.
Well, especially marathon runners from African countries, because a lot of people run everywhere they go.
Yep.
So they get a lot of good practice.
Sure. Sure, but that's her story.
That's her story, and she's sticking with it.
And then she'll be more than happy to share with you her experiences as a Zimbabwe road paver.
Well, I doubt that.
A
Zimbabwean road paver.
Yeah, exactly. You get it.
Lastly, as far as Patreon goes, we have Christine Johnson from Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Winnipeg. Thank you, Christine.
And somebody asked me, Mike, why don't you do any stories from Manitoba? And I went through our back catalog, and I did only find one that we did directly about Manitoba. We mentioned Manitoba in a couple more, but there was only one, and that's the Falcon Lake incident that we've done in Manitoba. So Manitoba, Manitobans, we promise we will cover some Manitoba stories coming up.
I had
because there's a lot of good ones. I've avoided a few because other people were telling me.
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I've avoided a few of those, but I think it may be time to hear our take on some of those.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So that's why I haven't told a lot. There were a few that were in the pipe, but I don't want to tell it if somebody else has told it within like 6 months.
Yeah, but we do have a different spin on things and cover things differently. So it might be the time that we do. And a lot of these new Patreon subscribers are coming in the $5 mark. So 5 and above, you get to hear our often profound, deep, and insightful after show topics.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah, and they are life changing. The topics that we cover, and the amount of preparation we put into it.
Well, actually, we have been putting more prep into it, but it's not like a regular show. So don't go expecting to hear another episode of Dark Poutine. It's more like Scott and I just being idiots.
Yep. So if you want to hear us be buffoons and do our buffoonery,
we're very good at it.
Oh yeah. It just I do think they're quite entertaining and hilarious. So if you come in at the $5 mark, you get and I think there's 60 episodes on the after show.
Yeah, there's over 50 now.
Yeah, so you can if you need more poutine, get in there.
Definitely. We did have some donut money this week. I know, right? Tara Tedford.
Oh,
she sent us some donut money with a message. She said, absolutely loving Dark Poutine, captivating at all times, sincere and empathetic when needed, and funny when appropriate. Thank you for all you do, Tara Smart.
Oh, thank you, Tara. That actually is quite, that's what we're shooting for, so it's wonderful to hear. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep, we actually have achieved what we were trying to achieve. And we did get some more from somebody in the UK, and her name is Kate Bolsover. And she didn't send us any note or anything, but thank you.
Thank you,
for
Kate.
The cash.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
So, it's my mom's name, so thank you, Kate.
Kate. Thanks so much to our patrons, past and present, for your pledges. We really appreciate your support of the show. As well, the folks who send us donut money. We are so happy that we get any support at all. Really.
Yeah.
If you want to help support us, you can do so at patreon.com/darkpoutine, or for one-time support, you can send us donut money via PayPal at our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. People have even sent us Interac emails with cash, too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
If you don't already, it would mean a lot to us if you subscribe to the show. You can easily find us on iTunes Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your on-demand audio. We don't have any voicemails this week. We do have stuff, whatever. Check out our website, darkpoutine.com, for show notes or for other cool stuff, and the phone number for the show.
The voicemail.
Yeah, because then you could call us.
We love it. And we
will play them.
Yep. If you want to get famous.
Or infamous.
This is how you do it.
Please give us a follow or a like on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search for Dark Poutine. Most importantly, tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. And we do have a promo this week.
Oh, sweet.
And the promo is from our friend Eve Lazarus.
Oh, yes. Now, a local author and host herself.
That is correct. And so her podcast is Blood, Sweat, and Fear.
Mm-hmm.
And she is a very cool person. So you should listen to her podcast. She's the one who wrote the book Murder by Milkshake.
Yep, a topic we covered earlier.
We covered it before her book came out, actually, which was interesting. I would have loved to have had her book to go from, but evelazarus.com, or her podcast is evelazarus.com category/podcasts. So pretty easy to find, but let's listen to Eve and her promo.
Let's do that.
I'm Eve Lazarus, and I'm a reporter and an author based in Vancouver, British Columbia. I host and produce Blood, Sweat and Fear, the story of Inspector Vance. Vance wasn't a police officer, as his title suggests. He was the first forensic scientist to work for a police department in Canada, and certainly the first to carry a badge and a gun. Vance was so good that he was known as the Sherlock Holmes of Canada, and his forensic skills were so advanced that in 1934 there were 7 attempts on his life by criminals afraid to go up against him in court. Each episode follows a different major crime that Vance helped to solve. You can find Blood, Sweat and Fear on Apple, Podbean, or your favourite podcatcher.
So that's right up the Dark Poutine alley for sure.
That sounds like a wicked show.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, seriously.
So just so you folks know, not this week, but I guess it'll be this week. The week that this show drops, on Saturday, I will be going to visit Eve Lazarus, and I may or may not pick up a couple of signed copies of her book, Murder by Milkshake, that we will be giving away in a future episode.
Oh, that's awesome.
And also, Eve and I have been doing some chitty-chatting, and we're planning an episode together about some of her unsolved Vancouver crimes that she's covered in her book.
Oh, my God, yes.
Yeah, so it should be a blast. We've got a lot of stuff coming up. So until next week, don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Chowder mouters. What's a mouter?
Yeah, it's part of chowder.